At a small makeshift camp tucked away behind a busy street, he met Maria, a gentle soul whose smile belied the hardships of her past. As they sat together on a worn rug, she shared her story of loss and resilience. Keanu listened intently, his calm presence offering her comfort and validation in a world that often overlooked her pain. Word of his unexpected visit spread quickly through the community. Local volunteers, inspired by his actions, joined him in offering support. Together, they organized a small pop-up shelter for the night, complete with hot meals, blankets, and even a few moments of shared laughter under the soft glow of streetlights. Despite the challenges of bureaucracy and limited resources, Keanu's steadfast commitment ignited a spark of hope. The community, once isolated and ignored, began to see the possibility of a brighter tomorrow, all because one man decided to look beyond the surface. The rally for change. Just as the warmth of their collective effort was taking hold, a sudden storm swept through the city. Torrential rain threatened to wash away the fragile sanctuary they had built. Sheltered under a tent in a nearby community center, Keanu and his newfound allies worked tirelessly to secure the supplies and safeguard those in their care. In the midst of the chaos, Keanu stood up on a makeshift stage, addressing a crowd of volunteers, local community leaders, and members of the press who had gathered, intrigued by the growing movement. His voice, soft yet resolute, carried a message that transcended the storm outside. "We may not have all the answers, and our challenges are great," he said, his eyes reflecting the flicker of hope in the dim light. "But every act of kindness, every shared meal, every warm blanket can be a lifeline. Let's build a city where everyone is seen, where every heart matters." The storm raged on, but within that room, a community was being reborn. One that believed in compassion, unity, and the power of individual actions to transform lives. A new dawn in the aftermath of the storm. As the sun peeked over the horizon, the pop-up shelter transformed into a long-term community center. Volunteers, inspired by Keanu's example, rallied together to secure funding and resources from local businesses and government programs. Months later, as Keanu strolled through the now vibrant community center, he paused to watch children play and elders share stories of a life reclaimed. A young volunteer approached him, eyes filled with gratitude, saying, "You changed our lives, Mr. Reeves." Keanu smiled gently. "We changed them together," he replied. His humility shone through every word, a reminder that true heroism isn't measured by fame or fortune, but by the strength of our compassion and the unity of our communities. In Hearts of the City, Keanu Reeves emerges as more than a Hollywood icon. He is a symbol of hope and quiet resilience. His willingness to help the homeless reminds us that every individual, regardless of their background or circumstance, deserves dignity and kindness. In a world often divided by appearances and wealth, it is our shared humanity and compassion that bind us together, lighting the path toward a brighter, more inclusive future. Keanu and the Forgotten. Despite his fame, Keanu Reeves never turned a blind eye to those struggling on the streets. When he encounters a group of homeless individuals in Los Angeles, he doesn't just hand them money. He listens, learns, and quietly changes their lives in ways they never expected. But when a wealthy businessman mocks his efforts, Keanu's response teaches everyone a lesson they won't forget. With a night encounter. It was late, past midnight, and most of Hollywood's elite were either at exclusive parties or asleep in their luxury mansions. Keanu Reeves, however, walked the quieter streets of downtown Los Angeles, dressed in his usual worn-out boots and jacket, hands tucked into his pockets. He had always found comfort in these late-night walks. The world felt different when it wasn't rushing forward, just the hum of street lights and the occasional sound of distant traffic. As he passed an alley, he saw them. 3 homeless men and an elderly woman huddled together under a flickering street lamp. A small, dying fire crackled in an old tin can beside them. One of the men, wrapped in a thin blanket, coughed into his hands. Keanu stopped. Instead of walking by like most people, he approached. The group tensed, used to being ignored or, worse, chased away. Keanu Reeves takes the subway like an ordinary person, blending in with the crowd. A group of wealthy businessmen notice him and snicker, assuming he's just another struggling actor or a lookalike. One of them even mocks him, asking if he forgot his limo. Keanu, as always, remains calm and doesn't engage, until an unexpected moment forces everyone to see him in a different light. Keanu Reeves and the subway lesson. The subway car rattled along the tracks, filled with people heading home after a long day. Keanu Reeves sat quietly in the corner, dressed in a simple jacket and jeans, his hair slightly tousled. He looked like any other commuter, unbothered, ordinary, unnoticed. Across from him, a group of well-dressed businessmen in tailored suits chatted loudly. One of them, noticing Keanu, raised an eyebrow. "Hey, doesn't that guy look like Keanu Reeves?" he whispered loud enough for others to hear. "Nah," another man scoffed. "No way Keanu Reeves would be on the subway. Probably just some broke actor trying to look like him." The group chuckled, and one of them smirked. Maybe he forgot his limo today. Keanu heard it all, but simply smiled to himself, keeping his focus on the book he was reading. He had never cared about material status. He liked the subway. It was simple, efficient, and real. Suddenly, the train lurched to a stop. The lights flickered. An announcement crackled over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing an emergency. Please remain calm." The passengers murmured, glancing around. Moments later, an elderly woman, standing near the door, wobbled and almost fell. Without hesitation, Keanu sprang up, steadying her with a gentle hand. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked softly. The woman nodded, grateful. Seeing she had nowhere to sit, Keanu immediately offered her his seat. She smiled warmly at him. The businessmen, who had been watching, suddenly looked uneasy. They shifted in their seats, realizing how foolish their earlier words had been. Here was a man they had mocked, showing more class and kindness than they ever had. A few minutes later, the train resumed moving. As Keanu stood near the door, one of the businessmen hesitated before speaking up. "Hey, you really are Keanu Reeves, aren't you?" he asked sheepishly. Keanu just gave a small nod and a friendly smile. The businessman cleared his throat. "That was, cool of you. I mean, giving up your seat and all." Keanu simply shrugged. "Kindness doesn't cost anything." The train stopped at the next station. Keanu stepped off, disappearing into the city crowd. The businessmen sat in silence, realizing they had just learned a valuable lesson. Not from a lecture, but from the quiet actions of a man they had judged too soon. People who look down on others based on status or wealth often miss the true meaning of greatness. Keanu Reeves, through his humility and kindness, reminds us that real value isn't in what you own, but in how you treat others. The world needs more people who lift others up instead of looking down on them for. The Quiet Guardian. Keanu Reeves is known worldwide as a Hollywood icon, but few know the truth. He leads a secret life beyond the silver screen. When a powerful media tycoon sets out to destroy the careers of those he deems unworthy, Keanu finds himself pulled into a shadowy battle, not just for his own reputation, but for those who have been wronged. As he navigates betrayal, hidden truths, and the weight of fame, he must decide, should he fight back, or will silence be his greatest weapon? The first blow. The night was cold in Los Angeles, the city buzzing with flashing lights and empty conversations. Keanu Reeves walked down an empty street, his hands in his coat pockets, his thoughts lost in the rhythm of his own footsteps. It had started with whispers, a few industry executives rolling their eyes at him during meetings, dismissing his ideas before he could speak. Then came the online articles, snarky remarks about his acting, his one-note performances, critics wondering why he still got lead roles. Keanu never cared for fame, but something about this felt different. One morning, a friend sent him a message. "Keanu, you need to see this." It was a leaked document, an internal email from one of Hollywood's most influential media moguls, Victor Henshaw. "Keanu Reeves is a relic of the past. He doesn't belong in this industry anymore. Let's make sure he fades away." Keanu stared at the screen. He had never met Henshaw personally, yet here he was, trying to erase him. But why? And more importantly, who else had this man hurt?
The resistance. Instead of retreating, Keanu did what he always did. He observed, he listened, and he helped. He quietly reached out to struggling actors, filmmakers, and artists, people Henshaw had shut out. He gave them support, funding their indie projects, standing by them when others turned away. But Henshaw noticed. Suddenly, Keanu's projects started falling through. Scripts he had signed on to were mysteriously shelved. False rumors spread about his behavior on set. Paparazzi hounded him, digging into his past, twisting his words. Yet, Keanu remained silent. He didn't fight back with words, he fought with actions. He walked to work instead of taking limos, treating every stranger like an old friend. He visited bookstores, chatted with cafe owners, and refused to become a bitter man in a war of egos. He still gave up his subway seat, still stopped to sign autographs for fans who waited in the rain. And people noticed. Hollywood's silence was breaking. Directors started speaking up. Actors who had once been afraid of Henshaw's power began to tell their own stories of manipulation and sabotage. The world started to see through the illusion of power. Keanu had never needed to play the hero, but now he had become one. The fall of Henshaw, furious at losing control, made his final move. He arranged for Keanu to be set up, framing him in a scandal meant to ruin his career forever. The tabloids ran wild. His name was everywhere. For the first time, Keanu felt the weight of it, the pressure, the unfairness, the way people were so quick to believe the worst. But then, something unexpected happened. People fought for him, fans, actors, directors, ordinary people who had once met him on the street and remembered his kindness. They exposed Henshaw's tactics. Old videos of Keanu helping people, standing by the underdog, and remaining humble resurfaced. Henshaw's empire crumbled. The industry turned on him. He was left powerless, his influence reduced to nothing. And Keanu, he simply walked away, unchanged. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just the same quiet, kind man he had always been. The legacy of Keanu Reeves. One evening, long after it was all over, Keanu sat in a small cafe, sipping his coffee as he watched people pass by. A young, aspiring actor approached him hesitantly. "Mr. Reeves, I just wanted to say thank you," he said, "for proving that good people can still win." Keanu looked up, smiled, and simply replied, "Kindness doesn't cost anything." And just like that, he walked into the night, fading into the city like a quiet guardian, his legacy not built on power, but on something far greater. Fame, wealth, and power may come and go, but true greatness lies in character. Those who look down on others out of arrogance will one day fall, but those who walk humbly, lifting others up, will leave behind a legacy that no one can erase. Keanu Reeves didn't fight for himself. He fought for those who had no voice. And in the end, that made all the difference. 5. Hearts of the City. In a chilly Los Angeles winter, Keanu Reeves steps away from the glamour of Hollywood to spend a day among the homeless. Confronted by the harsh realities of life on the streets, he quietly works to ease their burdens. Whether it's lending a listening ear, sharing a warm meal, or rallying support from local communities. This heartfelt narrative not only captures the transformative impact of one compassionate man, but also challenges society to recognize the humanity in every soul. A glimpse of reality. The winter wind cut through the city streets of Los Angeles as Keanu Reeves walked down a lesser-known boulevard. The neon lights of downtown cast long shadows, and the chill reminded him of nights spent shivering under makeshift shelters. Although famous for his roles in blockbuster films, today he was simply a man among many. Keanu had always been curious about the untold stories hidden within the bustling metropolis. That day, he passed a familiar park bench where a few homeless individuals had gathered for warmth. Instead of avoiding their gaze or hurrying along, he paused. There was something in the way they quietly endured the harshness of the night, a dignity that spoke louder than their worn-out clothes or tired eyes. Acts of quiet compassion. Over the next several hours, Keanu immersed himself in the rhythms of life on the streets. He started by distributing care packages he'd quietly assembled over time, a collection of warm blankets, non-perishable food items, and a few handwritten notes filled with simple words of encouragement.
"Hey," Keanu said, his voice warm but quiet. "Mind if I sit?" They exchanged wary glances. Finally, the old woman, Ruth, shrugged. "It's a free street." Keanu sat down on the cold pavement, crossing his legs like he belonged there. He pulled a sandwich from his bag, the one he had planned to eat later, and handed it to the coughing man. "You need this more than I do," Keanu said simply. The man hesitated but took it, his hunger winning over his pride. The others watched, curious. Most celebrities would throw money and leave, but this guy, he was staying. The lesson in humanity. Over the next hour, Keanu listened. Ruth had lost her home after her husband passed, left with nothing but medical bills. The coughing man, James, was once a construction worker before an injury left him jobless. The other two, Mark and Devin, were veterans who had been forgotten by the system. Keanu didn't pity them. He didn't promise miracles. He just listened, nodding, occasionally asking questions. Then he stood up. "Stay here," he said, and disappeared into the night. Half an hour later, he returned with bags of warm food, bottled water, and fresh blankets. He handed them out without a word about money or charity, just one human helping another. As they ate, a sleek black car rolled to a stop nearby. A wealthy businessman stepping out of a high-end restaurant noticed Keanu sitting among the homeless. He laughed, nudging his colleague. "Is that Keanu Reeves?" "What, you running out of cash, buddy?" His friend snickered. "Guess John Wick's not making enough anymore." Keanu looked up at them, unfazed. He didn't scowl, didn't argue. Instead, he smiled. "Kindness doesn't need a paycheck," he said simply. The businessman scoffed, shaking his head as he walked away. But Mark the veteran smirked. "I think you just made that guy question his whole life." Keanu chuckled and stayed with them a little longer before quietly slipping away into the night. The ripple effect. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A small article surfaced online. Keanu Reeves seen helping the homeless again. Unlike typical tabloid gossip, this one sparked something different. Donations poured into local homeless shelters. More volunteers showed up. A group of independent filmmakers even started a documentary about forgotten veterans, inspired by Keanu's late-night conversation. As for Ruth, James, Mark, and Devon, Keanu had made sure they got the help they needed through resources, job connections, and quiet support, never seeking credit for it. And somewhere in the busy streets of Los Angeles, a businessman who once laughed at kindness found himself staring in the mirror, wondering what it truly meant to be successful. Keanu Reeves didn't help the homeless for praise. He didn't do it for the cameras. He did it because it was right. Those who look down on others often do so to make themselves feel bigger. But true strength lies in humility, in lifting others up rather than stepping over them. And sometimes all it takes to change the world is one small act of kindness in the middle of the night.